I got two things for you today. No, not peace, but no, peace be with you. No, I have 2 points that I want to make. And so the first one is this, that it's rather interesting that, I'd say interesting and convenient, that with religious people, with Christians, the fact that their God is invisible and is silent, it makes it rather difficult for any of us skeptics to say, well, geez, we can't really fully disprove God because he's invisible, but at the same time, it kind of works against them, those that say that God exists, because you can't see and you can't hear, and so where is God? He's invisible and he's silent, so it makes it difficult to either prove or disprove, though I think Christians will oftentimes say that, well, the evidence for God is this, or his presence in our lives is this, and so they can point to these things and infer that these things are the evidence that we need to look to that proves God's existence in the world. But it is rather convenient that they're like, hey, no, God really does exist. You just have to take my word for it. Look, he's right. We can't point to him. So because you can't point to him and you can't visibly see him, you say, well, there's other things that we can look at in this world. We can look at the intelligent design argument. We can look at his handiwork and say, I don't buy that. But it's for them, it just seems like that they're always ever insisting that no, he really exists. He really does exist. And it reminds me of that Dark Matter 25 video where there's a scene where a guy walks up to another guy and he's like, hey man, he's like, there's an invisible man who's got a gun to your head and he wants you to give him all your money. And you're like, what? There's no gun. No, man, he's really there. And he's got a gun to your head and it says if you don't give him all your money, he's going to kill you. It's like, and it sounds ridiculous, but it's the same kind of thing that Christians assert, religious people assert, that there's a God, that he's really there, and that if you don't believe in him and you don't accept the sacrifice that he made on the cross by sending his son Jesus Christ, then you're going to suffer in eternity in the pits of hell. So there we go with violence. That's God's answer to everything is violence and more violence. And it's like, well, he's God, he can do that. We don't know that a God really exists, but my point was, so we have reason to not believe because we can't see and we don't hear, and God doesn't want to make himself real or make himself known to us, even though Christians may say, oh, well, God does make himself real to us in different ways. God does show that he has a presence in this world, and it's all subject. It's all not like, oh, yeah, that's really great evidence, let me believe. So that's one of the things that I wanted to mention. In that same vein, the second thing is, it's a lot like this, what Christians will do with Jesus' return. Like, many times they've been asked, hey, it's 2,000 years after his alleged time, when's he coming back? And so the response from Christians will be, oh, well, he is coming back, but not until everyone has heard the gospel, not until everyone has heard the good news. And so this has been asked for centuries, decades have gone by, a new generation after generation has come, and the same question keeps coming up, and of course, I'm sure the questions are asked by the believers as well, from the followers of Christ. They're wanting to know, hey, you keep saying that Jesus is coming back, and he doesn't seem to be coming back. Oh, well, he's, when everyone hears the gospel, when everyone hears the news of Jesus Christ, that, and what he can do for them, then he'll come back. Okay, well, here's the thing. If, let's say at 12 a.m. in the morning, everyone has heard the gospel, but at 12:01, a new baby is born, guess what? Oh no, now, not everyone has heard the gospel, so we've got to wait, let's say, till that child is of age to make a decision on their own. You see, saying that they're never going to, they keep moving the benchmark, is my point. They keep moving that threshold for, well, he'll come back when, and I don't know the whole history of it, of, the whole end times thing, and like, how that date is, how it's been moved. I mean, people had prophesied. They thought in 2000, the Y2K scare thing, they thought, all the computers, and that's going to be when the Armageddon's going to begin, and the end times, and the Antichrist will come, and they keep, and that's the Antichrist thing is a whole other topic for another video, but my point was just they keep moving the benchmark. They keep moving it out further and further, saying, oh, well, no, he is coming back. And at what point do you just say, no, this is not real. This is make-believe. Everyone is not going to hear the gospel at one given time. It's impossible. Because what about people in countries that you haven't reached? What about those places in those third world countries in the jungles of the Amazon where the missionaries haven't reached those people? Well, God will find a way. They always have some way that no matter what you try to say, they've got an explanation for it. They're going to explain it away. And I don't want you to explain away these problems that exist in the Bible. I don't want them to, first of all, to even exist. And just because I say, oh, man, my arm really hurts. And it's like, oh, no, your arm doesn't hurt. No, really, my arm really hurts. No, your arm doesn't hurt. Like people saying that God doesn't really exist. And you're like, no, God does exist. He's like, oh, well, let me massage that achy muscle. And that's what they do for skeptics and atheists. When the Christian will try to massage that disbelief, not out of the person, but, but they'll try to massage it away and try to explain away. And it's like, I don't want you to explain. I want you to explain to me why these contradictions exist in the first place, Mr. Apologist. Tell me why they're just apparent contradictions. They're just apparent conundrums. There are apparent problems. They don't really exist. No, they do exist. And it's not a figment of my imagination. Anyways, I digress a little bit. The topic of the video is those two things that I wanted to tell you about, which was one, talking about how, I forgot the parallel already. The second thing was Jesus. The first thing was about God and his attributes, about him being invisible God and him being a silent God, and how we have little reason to believe that he does exist because we can't see him and we can't hear him. And so if he wanted to make himself known to people, he wanted to make himself real, why be an invisible, non-present God that, you can't see? It kind of helps with the credibility a little bit if you can kind of see the guy, right? Or the being, you can see, oh, yep, there he is, all right. Or just, I don't know, in some way, other than just, nope, you just have to take faith on it. Well, God doesn't want to interfere with free will. That's the reason why he won't reveal himself to people, they say. I'm like, okay. And so, going back to the Jesus returning thing, it's the same kind of, I don't want to say circular argument, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like, they keep saying, oh, he is coming back, and you're like, well, when? Oh, well, not until everyone has heard the gospel, and well, that's never going to happen. So it's like a, not self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's just like you can see it's never going to happen, so they can just keep saying that and come up with these excuses, these ad hoc theories to explain why Jesus hasn't returned like he said. And when you look at Jesus' return, he said it was imminent within that generation. This generation shall not pass away before heaven will return, something to that effect. You can look it up. And so it's like, okay, so he meant in that time period. He didn't mean, now I'm sure Christian apologetics will have some way of getting Jesus out of a tight jam, because I'm not the first person to express that, passage in the Bible where it says that. But it does seem to be a clear surface read without doing any meddling that Christians oftentimes like to do with interpolations and trying to mess with the scriptures or take things out of context or that sort of thing. Just a surface read, a straight up read what it says on the page. One doesn't get any other conclusion than Jesus meant that he was coming back, that they could expect him back within that generation. That was the expectation. I mean, I don't care who you are. You can try to tell it another way. That's the straight up read it for yourself. That's what it is. It's not just me, oh, that's just your opinion. No, it's not about being my opinion. That's what the words say that Jesus said. And so any other reading of that, sure, maybe you could take it out of context. Maybe you could twist it into something. Christians are very good about that. So Jesus was expected to come back sooner than 2,000 years, and he hasn't come back yet. Well, won't you be surprised when you see him coming in all his glory in the sky? That's what many Christians will say, and I've heard over the years. It's like you're not allowed to doubt. Like we don't have good reason to doubt here. Like, the guy says he's coming back, and it's been 2,000 years. We still haven't seen him. Oh, well, whatever. It's always going to be some other excuse for why the expectation hasn't been fulfilled. And so you just find this circular conversation. You just never can get away from it, because they're always going to have some excuse for, why God needs to be invisible, why he can't really make himself known and make himself real to people in ways that would really help his credibility, that would really help us to believe. Another interesting point that I was recently watching a debate about was this whole idea about being omniscient, about knowing the future, and about free will. And I think it was Dan Barker that proposed this, and then I'll go ahead and close my video. He was talking about how if God could know the future, then he would already know what decisions that he was going to make, and therefore he didn't really truly have free will. Now it might be the same with us. If we knew the future and we knew every decision, we would be bound to those decisions unless we changed our mind. But if we knew the future and the decisions that were going to be made, how could we change our mind? So the same thing in the mind of God. Maybe I'm not doing justice to this explanation, but basically, if God knew the future, how could he, and he knew his future decisions, or knew the way things were going to go, that you create a paradox. Like in the movie Back to the Future, you can't go back in time and undo things in the past and not have it impact the future. Now people say, oh my gosh, he's gone off the rails. Now he's talking about Back to the Future. That's a Hollywood movie. Come on, man. But you see what I'm saying? That if God knows the future, everything's set in stone. So he doesn't have free will to do what he wants because he's bound to those decisions that he already knows he's made in the future. Unless, anyways, I may not be doing justice to that and to explaining that thing, but it was another interesting thing I was contemplating about the attributes of God. You know, he's supposed to be all-knowing, all-powerful, but yet he seems to be able to be very inept in dealing with the wickedness in the world. And then, of course, the explanation for that is, oh, well, God will deal with all justice will be served on Judgment Day, and people will get their just dues, whether it was some wicked thing or, you know, all righteousness will be judged and be, you know, and you better find favor with God. And it's sort of like, again, it's always moving it out to some future later date than the present time that we're living in right now. So one thing I guess I could say from all of this is Christians have a ton of excuses. They have a ton of explanations for things, and they need to have it because there's an awful lot of explaining that needs to be done. When you start making great claims, you need to have extraordinary evidence. I don't know if Christianity has extraordinary evidence. I think they certainly have some very extraordinary claims. See you next time.